Welcome to the OFX podcast. My name is Bethany McChesney, and along with me, as always, is Dave Claxton. This episode is going to be a little bit different today. I'm going to be running the show a little bit. Dave's going to kind of be in the background and try not to interject too much, but if he does, that's okay. But this is going to be a bit of a ladies' talk with myself, Bridget Brown, and Meg Jacoby. We have a special conversation today just about mom life and being athletes and kind of everything that entails. So I'm excited about this conversation. We've both kind of been chatting a little bit about the topics that we're going to talk about. But yeah, this is something too that I think is very powerful for a certain audience. Also, I think telling people's stories and kind of the struggles that we go through it's very inspiring for people when they can kind of connect to different aspects of your stories. And I do find that, again, being a mom and being an athlete, we don't always see too many moms necessarily doing sports still at an elite level. So things are changing more, especially even as time goes on. And I think it's important that we can kind of share a little bit about our struggles, and then other mom athletes coming up can relate to that as well. I know when I was younger in competitive sport, I didn't see anyone who was still kind of doing this at a level when they were older in age and then had kids. So I just love that there's moms still kind of kicking it in this world of elite sport. So I wanted to kind of chat with Bridget and Megan, and just we can kind of share our different stories about the struggles and all that we kind of go through with balancing all those things. So thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Bridget, so just kind of so we know what's going on too. So Bridget, you have 3 kids, correct?
Yeah.
3.
Yep.
So what's your names and ages then with your kids?
My oldest, her name's Miller. She's 8. My middle is a boy. His name's Lyndon. And then my youngest is Crosby, and she is 3. And wild.
And Megan, you have 1?
I have 1, and she's almost 8, and her name is Mila.
So I have 2 kids. I have a boy who's 11, Mason, and then I have a daughter, my wild child, Emerson. She's 9. So, Bridget, your kids, so just this cute story in Atlantic City. So at the DECA World Champs, so I was watching and I ended up standing right behind your husband and 2 of your kids. I think the third was running around Crosby behind, but it was the best sound to me is when little kids are screaming, "Go mommy." And I was behind your kids and I could hear them yelling, "Go mommy." And I started to like tear up as you're running by. Like, oh, and then so I took a couple of really cute pictures of your kids and your husband cheering you on. So I was like, oh, I'm always so inspired by moms. I have videos of my kids also watching a Spartan race when they were really little. And my friend had videoed them screaming, "Go mommy." And I cannot watch the video without tearing up too. Just that sound to me is the best sound in the world. And nothing, I think, pushes me more in races than when I hear my kids. So it was just a really cute moment, I think, with you and your kids.
Yeah, I saw those pictures and it was really sweet. And it's like during a race too, or just kind of anywhere. It's so loud, but I can hear my kids and I can hear like my husband or whatever it is. But that part's really cool when like it's super loud and in the whole arena or wherever you are, but you can still zone in on those little ones and those ones that mean the most. So.
Meg, did you have your daughter in Atlantic City?
I did. So my mom and my aunt came down with me, since it's just like it's a 4-hour drive for me from where I live, and my daughter came. So this was the first hybrid race I've done that she's been able to be at. So that was really fun. And she loved it during, and then was like, all right, it's time to go, like basically when I was finished. But I brought her up on the podium with me. And I have that picture posted, and I think, like you guys, like that's the most memorable part of it for me, because she's with me all the time when I'm training. Like not every session that I do, but so many workouts that I do, I have to bring her along with me. And so she's been a huge part of this journey for me, just as much as like I've been there and my friends who've worked out with me. And she's, obviously a big part of the why. So like, I feel like she earned it too. You know what I mean? Like if that makes any sense, because she's kind of my like gym bud. So
I think it's cool also. I work out with my kids around all the time, and I bring them to the gym all the time. And sometimes they do get a little bit annoyed with it at times, but I love when they can come to the races and then they see this is what mommy's working for. Like, this is why we go to the gym all the time. This is why I'm on the treadmill in the living room while you guys are playing or whatever. So when they can see the outcome of your hard work, that's why I think I love bringing them to races too. And for your daughter to get to see you, and you set the Deca Mile world record there too, and she got to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're all kind of in that agreement that it's like, like in my house, and Beth, we've talked about this. Like, I'm a single mom, so for me, like teaching her, especially how to be strong and how to set goals and how to work towards them, is not that it's even more important, but just from that side of things, like it's incredibly important for me because like, it's just me and her a lot of the time. So it's just very important lessons that I'm hoping she, even if she doesn't realize what they mean now, hopefully down the road, she'll look back and go like, wow, like my mom's really like worked really hard. And like, that's what you need to do whenever you want to like achieve something. So
it's like, yeah, it's like they say, we can tell our kids all these things that we want, but what we show them is really more important. And like teaching your kids about discipline and setting goals and hard work, we don't necessarily have to tell them as much as you just show them, right? And that's kind of what you're saying, right? You're teaching them by showing her. So
I had a question. Have any of your kids ever gone up to any of you? And I've actually got this from my kids sometimes, and approached you with well, you're not really like a regular mom. And that can both be done as a good way and a bad way. I'm more saying it as in a good way, but where they're like, well, they'll see you working out for 2 hours or 3 hours and then running an incredible race and doing this or lifting, whatever. And then something will come up and they'll see their friends' moms who, let's say are not quite as athletic, and then approach you as like, well, whenever they're talking to you as, well, you're different. You're not like a regular mom.
I don't know if my daughter's like figured that out yet, but I'm sure someday it will click that like her mom's the one running around the field and all the other moms are just like hanging out talking, but like that hour at practice that she has and I'm outside is like, I could get a lot accomplished. So I'm not sure if it's like sunk in, but I'm sure it will at some point, where it's like, oh, we do things a little different over in our house, we wake up and we like go down in the basement and, fight some demons every day or whatever the case may be. So I don't know. How about you, Bridget? Your kids are pretty young too.
Yeah, no, I don't think they've put that together or thought that way, but I think it's more the other way. They're like, oh, doesn't everybody do this? Like this is what we do. Isn't this what everybody does? Because my kids also have kind of my older ones have kind of gotten into like they've run a couple Spartan races themselves this year and kind of, they do their own stuff. But yeah, I think for them, it's just like, this is normal. And this is normal mom life. And like when they hear that other people aren't doing that, they're like, well, why? Kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, my kids are a bit older and they have started to say things like that. Like, my mom is really strong and like stuff like my mom's probably stronger than your mom, like kind of joking around like that too. But yeah, they're like, you're not normal, like what I do for fun. And I own a gym, like it's my whole world in that way. So yeah, my kids do. But they also say silly things like, you're not a normal size mom. You're really small for a normal mom, like stuff like that. But yeah, my kids do for sure. So the first thing that I was curious about both of you too was your life leading into becoming a mom. And then when you knew you were becoming a mom, did you always know that you would still continue to pursue athletics after?
That's a good question. So I was younger, Bethany. So I know we talked about that too, because we kind of have that a little bit in common. So I was very fit, obviously. And I was pretty close. I was pretty much like post grad college age. So I was still in like good running shape and was running for fun, and kind of started getting really into weightlifting a lot. And then was able to work out my whole pregnancy, and then basically like was just itching so badly to start being active again that my daughter was basically in a jogger every day for the first 4 years of her life. So that also became, and I share that with anyone that I know that's becoming a new mom or whatever, and when they have questions, and I'm just like, your kids adapt to whatever you do. And for me, it just, and her, it just became a part of our everyday routine. And it was like, that was one of her naps, was me running with the stroller. And sometimes I'd be out there for way longer than I wanted to be because the nap was going really long. But so for me, it would just kind of, but I wasn't competitively, I wasn't competing. That was just obviously a big part of my life regardless. But so it's just more like working out. And then as she got a little older and I moved home, had some like help with my parents being around and whatnot, then I was kind of really able to get back into competitive running again and just had some time. And then in the routine, same thing. It was like some days, even when she was 4 or 5, and it was really hard pushing her in that jogger at that point, like sometimes that's just what we had to do. Or a lot of the time I'd wake up and I put her in the car seat at 5:30 in the morning, carry her out asleep, bring her to my mom's house, put her to sleep in my mom's bed with, and then I went out for my run before work. And that was like the only time we had. But it's just like, they just it just becomes so normal that it's not, it's not weird. And then eventually there's fights sometimes, but honestly, they're pretty sparing. And I think it's just because it's just like, oh, okay. Well, sometimes I get the question, oh, how come we're not going to the gym today? And it's like, this is great. This is a great question and problem to have, So that's kind of like been my journey with it. So.
Yeah. What about you, Bridget?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't competing or really, I was always working out. I played sports in college and was active and competitive in that way. But I had my first at 24. So there was a few years in between there where I just worked out, just kind of stayed in shape. So, but I've always been like, had a competitive nature to me. Like, I think I did like Orange Theory for a long time. And I remember like racing next to the person next to me, but they didn't think I was racing them, but I'm like, so I've always been competitive, but, and really, my kids are a little bit older and still haven't, this is probably like the first year that I've actually been competitive post having kids. But again, same thing, like just have always, taken them in the jogging stroller, had the double out the other day and was pushing my heavy 6-year-old and 3-year-old. And so just kind of same as Meg, just kind of have always had fitness and health kind of in our everyday. And it's just, they've kind of adapted with that as the years have gone on. So
yeah, when I got pregnant also, with my first, I was running, training, at a pretty high level too. And actually I trained through my pregnancy, but my coach at the time, was really pushed me to keep doing high levels of training while I was pregnant, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. And it wasn't an easy pregnancy. And I was pregnant at the same time as, I don't know if you probably know who Kara Goucher is. And so he kept comparing, well, she's doing these things and she's pregnant. And I'm like, I'm not a professional runner. And she has all this support and the Ultra G treadmill. And I ended up having to actually leave him as a coach because he wouldn't stop trying to get me to do all these things while I was pregnant. And so I kind of backed away a little bit because I was just so turned off by the expectations in the running world of a pregnant woman at that time. And so but I did race fairly soon after also. I never wanted becoming a mom to be the end of my athletic life. But same as you, Meg, I got a running stroller, and I laughed when you said it, but I planned my day so that his one nap was my run. So we put him in the stroller. That's his second nap. I knew about the time of his nap. That'd be the length of my run. And then when I had two kids, I got a bigger stroller, one that zipped right up. So it's like a pod. I'd throw snacks in there and toys and blankets, and then we'd go as long as they were happy. But yeah, so much of my training for years was pushing the running stroller. And I think it actually, in a lot of ways too, it makes you that much stronger. And just having to push around the stroller with two kids in it. But I mean, my kids loved it. They loved the running stroller. It was like they went for a ride for 2 hours or however long. And but yeah, you adapt. I remember doing workouts sometimes with a kid in a carrier. You're just doing walking lunges. Yeah, squats up and down the stairs, like whatever you can do just to move. Like I think when you become a mom, and if you want to make it work, you make it work. Sometimes I would like do burpees jumping over my kid as they're like just kind of making it a game or whatever. Like I always just tried to do something small. But yeah, I did jump into competing still immediately after, but it was just kind of my thing where I didn't want being a mom to end all of my goals. I so though I had a bit of pushback when I did continue. So I wanted to know if you guys did also, because it was really difficult for me because it was always my goal to continue competing. But then when I did, and it was especially from my mother-in-law, and this is fine to say because I know she doesn't listen to my ex-mother-in-law does not listen to my podcast, but what's that?
I'll tag
He's
her.
a tagger.
Yeah, tag her. But yeah, there was constant questions from her about when are you going to give this up? I thought when you became a mother, you would let this go. And I was so baffled by it because this had been me my whole life. So I could not understand the questions about why can't you give this up now that you're a mom? And it really hurt. And so I think for me was trying to prove to people that you don't have to give it up when you become a mom. And for some of the people around me who kind of, I don't know if it's like the stubbornness in me that I was like, I'm not giving this up. And especially because you think that this is what's supposed to happen now that I'm a mom. And I was young. I was 26 when I became a mom too. And I mean, we know there's lots of competitive years after your 20s too. So it was never my intention. So I think some of it was to prove people wrong. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have support with that then after, or did you have some pushback from people?
I definitely, like at the gym sometimes, can tell that like people probably think I'm really selfish because unfortunately just with working a full-time job and I train part-time, and then with her, she's getting involved with things because she's getting older. So she's playing sports. She plays a different sport every season, does dance every week. So there are times when we're at the gym at 7:00 and we don't leave till 8:30 and it's a school night. And that's just kind of what we have to do or what I have to do. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of people who kind of look at me like, oh, you're so selfish. Like it's a school night, your kid should be in bed and blah, blah, blah. Without knowing that, like, I can also allow her to sleep in and drive her to school if I needed to. Like, so of course there's much to the, that people don't know. In my, early years with my daughter, I was pretty much on my own. So I just didn't have the option to really have help. So that's why I lived really far away from home at that time. And her father was in the military, so he was gone a lot, and just, obviously the relationship didn't work out, but I had no choice but to bring her anytime I wanted to do anything. So when I was able to move home, I think my parents, thankfully, were really understanding that like this is a huge part of my identity as a person. And playing collegiate sports, and my brother, we talked, and my brother's a professional bodybuilder. So like that's just kind of really normal for my family, thank God, because otherwise I don't know how I would have done a lot of what I'm doing, or even just the lead up to here where I am now. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm the only one, I'm the only mom of all the friends that does stuff and travels here and there for this or that. And you're kind of in like you're kind of on your own in that regard. And it's not, people don't relate, because some people just want to be a parent, and that's totally fine. But, that's not all that I am. And that's just how I feel. So it can be a lonely road. And I'm the only one of even any of my friends that I train with, really. I think, my friend Jarrett Newby is the only other, and his wife are the only other couple I'm friends with and train with that have kids. So, people don't always understand the struggle, even just with that, especially when you're trying to compete at a really high level. So, yeah. So thankfully I didn't have the ex-mother-in-law situation, Bethany, because I can't imagine. That must have been very difficult to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the most hurtful comments that was said to me was, I thought you would be happy just being a mom. As in, like, that I couldn't find happiness with this. I had to do all these other things for happiness. And it was such a misconception about why I did these things. And like you said, it's part of your identity, and it has nothing to do with, it's really not a selfish pursuit. And I deal with this too, being a gym owner, and a lot of my clients are moms, and there's a lot of times when they're like, it feels really selfish to to leave after dinner. And but to me, I am my best person when I am doing these things. And I know you guys can relate to this, where when I'm pursuing these goals and I'm disciplined and I'm working. And I think these are lessons that we need to pass on to our kids, right? So because we want them to learn these things, but if you're not demonstrating them, then the lessons just fall to deaf ears. So why are we letting these things go for the sake of feeling selfish about them, when it's completely the opposite? I don't know, Bridget, what was your experience then with after? Did you ever have the you're being selfish type scenarios?
I really can't pick out a particular time that someone said something to me or whatnot. I've actually had people have been pretty supportive. I find it sometimes just recently I'm starting to miss a lot of the things that, like, some things that are really important to me, like missing my son's opening day baseball game for High Rock Chicago. And like that, I mean, no one has said anything to me. My husband's like, "Go, you need to do this. Like, this is, and he's super supportive, which is awesome. But there's sometimes part of me that is like, I want to be here and I also want to be here. So it's like trying to do all the things can kind of pull you different ways. But I've actually been really blessed and lucky to have supportive partner, my husband and family. My mother-in-law, as much as she's my mother-in-law, she's also very supportive. So I'm with Meg. I can't imagine having like that, someone in your ear constantly saying something like that to you, Bethany. But I haven't come across that negativity. At least no one has said that to me, to my face. Maybe they're talking about it behind my back or something, but not to my face, at least. So.
Mm-hmm. So this is something that I struggle with more as my kids get older and their sports start to become more significant too, is, sometimes my son's in a hockey tournament and I'm going to a race, or my daughter's doing a competition or something. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, because this is probably one of the first years when their stuff is becoming really significant. So, and maybe you guys have thought about this too, but I just think, if my son's going here and I'm going here, then we kind of like teammates in a way. You send each other off with your best wishes, and we'll keep communicating. I'll ask him how his tournament's going. He'll ask me how my race is going. And it's like you're still supporting each other. You're just in different places. And again, I think it's okay to sometimes for kids to not always be the center of the universe for multiple adults. where it's also like my goals are still important, his goals are important, and we can support each other's goals, but we don't necessarily, I don't have to give up mine for you for you to chase yours, and we can support each other in different cities. So that's just kind of how I've been working through it with my kids. And again, I'm a single mom now too, so I feel like sometimes missing things hurts a little bit more because you do miss a little bit more in general because I don't have them all the time. So that's kind of the conversations I've had with my kids around situations anyways over the last year when we've been in different places.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it and think about it and discuss it. I don't think they've said, like, my son hasn't said anything like, oh, I'm sad that you're not going to be there or anything like that. He's just as excited to hear about my race too. So, which is pretty cool. So, but a good way to look at that. So
I think in a scenario like that, what Bethany says, it's a little different. And compared to when you're missing, if you're going out and it's going to sound a little cheesy, if you're going out and like achieving some glory, you're pursuing something, you're doing something that your kid's going to look at and be able to see, and sometimes even watch on TV and see, oh my God, that's mom. She's out there killing it. She's doing amazing things, compared to, oh, well, I couldn't make Johnny's soccer game because the Super Bowl was on and I needed to watch that. Or, and this, and I feel bad for saying this, but, or if it was a work thing, like if I missed something because of my kids, because I had to go off to work a shift of overtime or something like that, they're not going to appreciate that as much as when you're chasing something like that, and I think the decision is very different to where if I was to say yes to a shift of overtime and like, because I'll get some extra cash, well, that cash doesn't really bite off compared to something else that's a little more permanent and memory etched in them. So I don't see as much of a problem. And along the lines of the criticism, I wanted to ask, for some of the criticism that I have heard women receive, it's often from other women. And I'm wondering if that is the case that you guys would have noticed too, and why. Is that a jealousy thing, do you think? Is that a just a judgmental thing, as in, well, the way I raise my kids is right, so what you're doing is wrong? Like, why do you think that that's the nature of the beast?
Well, I think this is just like the classic woman hating woman thing. I think it could be about anything. Honestly, I feel like that's a very common thread, but that's why I love this community so much, is because in this community, I find that I receive so much positivity from other women, especially other moms, and that's been really, really nice, not just for me, but also makes me feel like maybe I can help make a difference for other people. Because it takes an incredible amount of self-discipline just in general, but let alone when you're juggling your kids and their stuff on top of your stuff and working. And, it's a whole nother layer of commitment and discipline to achieve your goal. Right. And I just feel like a lot of people are just really undisciplined and they can't make it happen even with half of that stuff on their plate. So I think it's more of like an insecurity or maybe a jealousy thing, like you were kind of saying, Dave. And it makes for long days, for us. It's not like it's, the most ideal scenario for us every day. I'm sure all of us would love to be able to come home after work and like sit down and hang out with our kids more than we're able to, or not have to wake up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning to get it done. I know Bridget works out every morning and that's her time. And like, I'm in awe of all of the other women. And so I do think that being in this community, it has been really positive, or at least I felt that way. And I'm sure you guys could probably relate to that as well. It seems like everyone is really like almost like thankful sometimes when I post things and my daughter's there with me, or like last night she made her own circuit up. I was doing my long run at the gym because it was snowing, and she's running next to me, and then she's doing some dumbbell bench press. Her feet don't touch the floor, but it's all those things. And I'm hoping that it's showing people like if you make a commitment, like your kids emulate you, they will want to be like you. They want to, they look up to you. So hopefully it turns into more of that, even with just like regular people who aren't always fitness oriented too.
Yeah, I wonder too, because I've thought about this also, Dave, like why would they be so critical? I think sometimes maybe if someone sacrificed something about themselves, thinking that was just the right thing to do, when they became a mom, so maybe there is some jealousy in that I gave up all these things, therefore, and that was the right thing to do according to them. Then if they see someone else who chose not to give up all these other aspects of their life when they became a mom, then maybe there is a bit of guilt around it. Well, she made that work. Why I wish I maybe, so maybe there's regret or jealousy, or I mean, those types of emotions come from a place of there's a hurt there somewhere. So whatever it was that they were feeling, and it comes out towards us anyways. So, and I mean, I'm at a point in my life now where I would never take any of that personally. I understand it's a personal thing with them. When I was 26, it hurt a lot more, and my understanding of things, I took it much more personally. But no, it's stuff that they've just haven't really dealt with based on their perceptions of what moms are supposed to do. When people have kids, they're supposed to sacrifice everything, and obviously then they have different ideas about it, and that's okay. So and I'm not saying, and I don't want things to get mixed up either, where like every mom who was an athlete necessarily needs to keep doing it. Like I have a lot of people that I ran track with too, they became moms and they don't do it anymore, and that's completely fine too. Some people just, I never lost the desire, so therefore I wanted to keep doing it. So I think when the desire's gone, it's fine to step away, or pursue other things. But I mean, if it's still there, I don't think becoming a mom then just should eliminate your desires, if that's what you choose anyways, to keep going.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask too then, similarly, when you were pregnant, did you have any judgment? I have some really funny stories about being pregnant and training. So with my first, I was pregnant overseas. We lived in Dubai. And so I was teaching at an international school. So there was lots of people from different cultures. And so, which means a lot of different ideas about pregnancy, depending on where people come from. So I was judged for not drinking by people from certain cultures. And then I also once, I was on the track, I was running on the track, and I was doing some strides, and I was coaching the high school group there, and I was doing strides. I was maybe 4 months pregnant, not very pregnant. And a mom literally ran out on the track, grabbed me, and was like, "You need to stop running. You're going to hurt your child." And
Wow.
she grabbed me on the track, and she was angry at me. And I was like, "I've done this forever. I'm totally fine. I feel completely fine." And she was so upset. And then similarly, I was 9 months pregnant, the same pregnancy, and I was in the gym and just doing like a squat press. And a personal trainer comes up to me and he grabs me and he's like, "You shouldn't be doing that. And if you need help, you come and see me." I'm completely fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
But my first pregnancy, I had so much judgment. And then my second, it wasn't as bad. But yeah, I don't know if you had any stories like that too when you're pregnant, and people just, you shouldn't be doing this when you're pregnant with training.
Definitely more in like the lifting side of things. Like I remember, I think I ran until about 5 months, and then I had some issues and it was just super uncomfortable. So then I just kind of switched to like walking or the Stairmaster. I remember I did that a lot. And like no one ever said anything, of course, in regards to those things with me, but like anytime I remember I was probably 2 days before I went into labor, I was lifting at the gym, and I remember having and they were old men, like, you know, 80s. And it was very much like, and it was harmless because I knew like it was just a generational thing, but I definitely had them they were like, why would you do that? Like, all this stuff. And then I'm like 24 or 23 at the time. And I was just like, okay, like keep it moving. And I remember, I was actually surprised, that my doctor was so like I had no clue that like you could work out so intensely even while pregnant, because I was pretty young. So I didn't know, like I had no friends going through this. Right. So I just kind of, from like movies or like whatever growing up, like I thought that you couldn't really work out. So I remember like at my doc, OBGYN, she's telling me, do everything you normally do. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, literally like do everything you would normally do. You can do anything. And then of course it was just, if it's uncomfortable, then just don't. But I was shocked that there were like no restrictions. Cause of course, like growing up, I think you have a different idea maybe. Especially if you don't, like I said, I had no one close to me that was going through the same experience. So it wasn't like I heard from other people. So that was like a cool surprise to me, because as a athlete and just a fitness nut, I was like, oh my God, like what am I gonna do, and just really kind of dreading the 9 months. And then that was a pleasant surprise. But definitely a lot of looks, and it was for me, it was like men mostly, which is interesting. I think sometimes women can rally behind each other and they're like, yo, you go girl, I got more of that, at least from women. I didn't have anyone stopping me and ripping me off the track. Bethany. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I had anybody ripping me off the track or like that either. But I think it got I think with my first pregnancy, people were like, wait, you're still doing handstand push-ups, you're still doing this kind of stuff. And then with each pregnancy, they're like, oh well, she's still doing handstand push-ups, so she could do that kind of stuff. So so I think other people's expectations, like they just were like, well, she's gonna do it. But yeah, you definitely get the looks when it comes to the weights, I think, or like the more of the CrossFit type style movements, pull-ups, things like that, where I didn't get it as much with the running or cardio per se. But I was able to, I think Megan, you said you stopped running around like 5 months. I mean, the doctors did say, as long as it doesn't feel uncomfortable, right, just keep doing everything that you're doing. And I was fortunate to be able to do that, I think, with all my pregnancies. But yeah, nobody really said much to me, I don't think so.
I actually remember, now that I'm thinking about it, I remember getting a lot of more negative comments pushing the jogger after, and even when my daughter was like older than anything. We had like a very mild incident with the jogger where like one time ever in like 4 years that I was pushing her, in that we like kind of tipped it over, and she was startled more than anything, and I was startled more than anything. And there's this woman like reported me, didn't come help at all or ask me if I needed anything, watched me from across the street, and like sent an email to our local running club about how it was a bloodbath, and it was the most irresponsible thing she'd ever seen. My daughter had like one scrape on her knee, like she was falling more and hurting herself more than like that ever hurt her. And so that, and then ironically, my friend gets the email, and I'm like an hour later, he's telling me that they got this crazy email, and it was about me, and I'm literally like, oh my God, that was me, like an hour ago. Like I'm running down. And I think it was also just like in our area, very uncommon to see people running with a stroller. Like it's not work. I don't live in a very like active area, and we live in upstate New York. So it's like, we don't have amazing seasonal weather all the time. So people aren't out as much, just in general. But so like, I'm the only, like, people know me as the lady running with the jogger. So because no one else does it around here. So that was like the craziest thing that had ever happened to me. But my daughter was she was literally in preschool at the time. So she wasn't even an infant. But yeah, sometimes it's like people are just out of control. So that was child abuse to her, that woman. So
the first thing that comes to my mind when you say that is, well, let's just for argument's sake say I see you abuse your child by tripping and falling.
yeah,
My thought is it's a bloodbath. I had best email the local running group.
yeah, right.
It's
She thought it
abuse.
was race,
Wouldn't
and
you like call a cop? Like,
so I was like, well, where are all the people? Like, she was like, is there a race going on? Because this woman, and she just, whatever. And I was like, I was literally alone. Like, what are you talking about? So that was pretty funny.
it just means you were winning. You were doing really well in the race.
Of course I was winning. But
Oh man. Well, this question is more just for anyone who's listening who might be more curious or going through issues with it. But if you nurse, did you have any issues training and nursing at the same time? Or racing and all of that?
so I give Lauren Weeks so much credit because I was very blessed in that I was able to nurse for a really long time, and I had an easier road with it than a lot of people. And I'm very cognizant that that's a really big struggle for a lot of moms. I just was lucky, but I will never forget like how many times I'd have to stop sometimes to nurse on a run, and how sometimes it was just so frustrating because you just like, it was like the 30 minutes, I just need 30 minutes, or like I would leak through my shirts all the time while running. So that was really pleasant because then I'd get home and I wouldn't have any clue. And then I'd get home and I'd be like, that's why everyone was staring at me, like, get the look like, why are just her boobs sweating? And it's like, not sweat. So I just, Lauren, I think I believe she's still on her journey with that and competing. And I like hats off because it's incredibly exhausting too. And I don't know that you realize at the time how much extra work your body's actually just doing and how many calories you're spent, you're and on top of the amount you're training. It's like, it's really unbelievable. And I think and I hope she feels this way, but she's such an amazing example for moms just in general. But especially new moms or people like who will have kids in the future that like it's completely possible.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's lots of interesting moments with that. And just in a lot of interruptions sometimes. And I don't know if Bridget, you felt the same way, but like sometimes it was not an easy task getting a short run in, let alone anything longer.
Right. Yeah, I was able to nurse all three for a while as well. Just was easier, and like Meg said, it's hard for some people. So I am thankful for that. But I remember I've always been an early morning gym person. So I remember like when you wake up, you're like super full and they're hard and they hurt and it's painful. And I remember just having to like pump to like release and like before I go to the gym, because I'm like, there's no way I can go to the gym like this. There's no way I can run. I can barely walk without pain. And like pump for like 10 minutes, go to the gym, come back just in time to like feed them. And my husband walked in, he's like, are you sweaty? I'm like, sweaty milk. The kids love the sweaty milk. I mean, like it was like, I swear every time I came home from the gym there, it was like the best feed. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, you're feeding, especially when they're young, and those like first, 12 months, they're feeding every 4 hours ish, and people don't realize that. And so to like time your workouts versus like pumping versus, if they wake up early from a nap or if you're working too, just having to like pump, work out, like it is super, super difficult, and time consuming and like a full-time job, just nursing. But it's totally doable. And, like if you have the support and you have the resources and you're feeding your body and doing all of that stuff, it's totally doable. So, but again, hard for some people too. And not for everyone. Just because you don't nurse doesn't mean anything. So, but yeah.
And I found I really struggled to consume enough calories to nurse and train. And I felt like I had to eat nonstop, especially with my son. He nursed almost every 2 or 3 hours for the first 6 months of his life, including throughout the night. So extremely sleep deprived. And yeah, just trying to keep up that amount was so exhausting, and I had to literally be eating all the time. But yeah, so I knew I always had that 2 hour window again. So I same thing, I would nurse, I would get my workout in, I'd fly in the door in my sweaty sports bra and then nurse again because he would be crying. And yeah, a lot of sweaty nursing sessions. But yeah, they like salty sweat. It's really not a problem. But yeah, and then the other part of it too that I struggled with too was even just the size, so like the engorgement. And I remember for the year after my kids, just having to double and triple up on sports bras. And I know again Lauren is struggling with this too, and especially the first while when it's just there's more milk and you're bigger, and just feeling so uncomfortable, not being used to that, and just having to wear extra again. To just kind of support the girls a little bit better, but just the discomfort of all of that too. But then I find too, like you almost forget when you're in it. It's so exhausting. It's so hard. And, if you nurse for a year and then you're done it, and it's like you just forgot though too. Like it was like you were in this haze of just like juggling these things. And then, yeah.
Hindsight is like, holy, like I remember having that. How the heck did I do that? Like because you just do it. Like you're just in mom mode and you just do it, and you don't really even think about it or question it. But like looking back, I'm like, and for me, Bethany, I had a lot of problems with like the calorie thing too. Like I was so thin, the thinnest I've ever been in my life, when I was nursing after I had my daughter. And I remember people being like, oh my God, like you look amazing. And how did you have a baby? Like, there's no way. But like, it wasn't healthy. You know what I mean? And cause it was really a struggle. And of course, for me, like not being able to, or being uncomfortable running through half of my pregnancy, I was so eager and excited to get back to that like looking back now, I was like, wow, like I was not as healthy as I could have been. Like I felt like my kid was just taking all my calories. And then of course I'm expending a lot just working out. And so then like the weird dealing with when I stopped, like going back to my normal, like healthy weight was a real like wake up call, which is really where I'm at right now. It was kind of a wake up call a little bit, because it was like, you're actually really 10 pounds at least heavier than you were, normal. Like this is what you should have been, you know what I mean? So that was kind of an interesting thing. And I wonder if people kind of struggle with that too. Cause I know, it goes both ways. Some people have a hard time like taking it off after kids. And I think I went too far the other way unintentionally. So that was kind of a weird thing for me.
I had another friend like that, Meg, who like she nursed and like couldn't keep weight on.
Yeah.
Was not like that. I kind of like held on to like an extra I held on to like an extra like 5, 8, 10 pounds. And it wasn't until I stopped nursing that I was able to like easily drop that. But I think it was just my body naturally just holding on, or maybe just I was eating so much because I was hungry and all the time. I remember waking up in the middle of the night eating, like even like after I was done feeding, like I was just like waking up hungry all the time while I was nursing. But yeah, I was kind of the opposite, not complete opposite. It was never super big, but yeah, I just held on to that extra weight. So I think everybody's a little different.
Yeah, I was like you, Meg. I had a hard time keeping weight on, and I did get smaller than I had wanted to be after pregnancy too. And but my second, it wasn't like that, but she was a much smaller baby than my son. So she just didn't take as much out of me, I don't think. But yeah, it was like that with my first for sure. But that's something else that I find really interesting. Did your view then of your body change after having a kid? So I know for me, so I struggled with an eating disorder, and pregnancy kind of shifted things for me, where all of a sudden my body was no longer, it was not about me and it wasn't about performance, and all my body was now building a human. And it was like a switch was turned in my mind, and my body, I viewed it entirely different. And now it was this incredible vessel that was growing a human being. And then after kids, it was after the baby was born too, and the whole process of like having the baby, it was like this respect for what the female body was capable of, that I don't think it it gained I gained such a sense of like empowerment, and just feeling like just so much more respect for my body. And before kids, I was always concerned, oh, would you, and people ask this, they say this too, like, I don't want to, like, I hope you get your body back or whatever. But after, I was like, I don't even care, because that was just such a powerful experience. Then what the body is capable of, just, it blew my mind, that what it looked like after, I cared none. So I don't know if you have any experiences where your view of your body after having a kid changed at all.
I agree. I felt very similarly to you. And I remember, like, again, like, I had like I was like winging it super hard, had no experience, no people, like, so every bit of information I'm getting is like from my mom. So who, it was like 30 years ago that she did this. So I remember her saying to me, like, just, and it was a good thing she warned me that, like, you might leave the hospital and look pregnant still. Like, you need to know that, like, just because you have this baby doesn't mean you're going to look like you did before. And I ended up obviously kind of having that experience anyway, just because of like the nursing stuff. And I had a very large child. So, and then she was really, really chubby because of all of that. But, I definitely felt like the strongest that I had ever felt. And I think that was really needed for me, and like where I was in my life too, because I think, similarly to you with the collegiate running world, it was very, very body focused. And like, I was proud that I was able to bounce back in my fitness. I didn't care so much about how I looked. I just was like very happy to be like finding myself again, in an athletic way, and just like also very early on prioritizing it in myself. You know what I mean? Even though it was hard, and half the time or most of the time my baby was with me anyway, it was just like finding the time to like have for myself was really important for me. But I definitely agree. I never felt more strong, like just mentally, like, look at what I just created, like that whole thing. And then just like feeling so proud, like, just even seeing your child was like the most amazing thing. But yeah, and I would love for people to be able to focus on that more than like, oh my God, but I'm still like 30 pounds and I gained this much weight during this and whatever. Um, because I think, if you have that negative mindset, it's going to be even harder to like reach whatever goal it is that you set, for yourself. But I think people need to give themselves a lot more grace. And I always say that to my friends, because you can't compare, you can't compare yourself to everyone's experience is so different. And like for me, I might not, I could be the polar opposite. If I ever had another child, I could be the polar opposite experience to my first, which I know like because every pregnancy is totally different in and of itself. So I would love to see more women give themselves like the grace of not overthinking that type of stuff. And then just, if you feel like you have a goal or whatever, just prioritizing yourself. That's the biggest thing, And I know it's hard to do, but yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, I didn't bounce back super fast. Like I said, I held on to some weight just while I was nursing, but I think I knew, I was holding on to this weight, but I was also feeding my child, and it was, that was my goal at that time, were them. But I mean, and then post nursing, about a year, I feel like I was able to be stronger, both mentally and physically, like knowing that like we went through that, so I can do more, and lift more, and do everything else, because we birthed a child, or multiple children or whatever. But I would say I'm personally probably in better shape now after 3 kids than I was even in college. Just like I said, physically and mentally. But it didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of hard work. Wasn't like you have a baby and you have a 6-pack again or something. It takes a while.
I think the coolest thing, like I remember I think I agree with you, where like I thought I worked really hard in college, and then like after having a child, I was like, oh my God, I didn't do shit. Like like that, like the things you thought were hard are suddenly not hard at all, because you have a kid, and that's hard. You know what I mean? That's actually hard. And then, so your mindset like shifts, at least it, like, I'm sure you agree, but that's how I felt, where I was like, this is nothing. Like this doesn't even hurt. Like, this isn't even that bad. You know what I mean? So that was probably a good thing. And then I feel like the same, like I'm in like the best shape of my life now, with, a child, even with the busy life and the hard to figure out time to get everything done, than I ever was before I had my daughter. So
yeah, we did some fitness test. I can't remember what it was called, but I like think about it now. I'm like, I wish I could go back and do that now. I bet I'd crush all of those college kids.
Yeah.
Like, not really. I probably wouldn't, but I don't know. I think about it sometimes. I'm like, I'm in way better shape, and I was good at it then, but I feel like I'm in better shape now. So I don't know.
So Bethany touched on something, and you were all college runners, and
Well, I think Bridget did soccer.
oh, you did soccer, so you were all,
Yeah.
anyway,
There's a lot of running in that.
a lot of collegiate athletes. And Bethany touched on the eating disorder thing. So coming from a realm where that is so prevalent, when you become pregnant and you start to be that, the mom athlete, how does that work? I mean, obviously, like you said, the amount of food you need to consume, the calories you need to intake, how does one affect the other? And that must be mentally be very difficult.
So for me, it was like, all of a sudden, though, it wasn't about me anymore. So it sounds like it maybe was more difficult than, and again, I could be forgetting exactly, because not that it was a long time ago, but sometimes your memory gets foggy around certain things. But I felt like the moment I found out I was pregnant, my body was no longer my own. It didn't matter anymore what I looked like. It didn't matter. Any counting calories or whatever I did before, it didn't matter, because it wasn't about me anymore. It was about my son. So the whole idea of eating and restricting and trying to be smaller just completely went out the window. So, and I don't know, like, recovering from an eating disorder is hard. I was worried about what would happen after my son was born, if I would just kind of fall back into bad habits. But again, like I said, the way that 9 months being pregnant and just feeling like that whole experience was just so empowering on its own. I couldn't view my body the same, and I never wanted to abuse it in that way again. So it was like I had this 9-month time to completely shift the way I felt about my body and its capabilities. And so it was hard, but it was like everything kind of changed in an instant, though. And I did struggle, though, when I was pregnant, because coming from having an eating disorder, I gained a lot of weight pregnant. And some of it had to do with the fact that now I was eating properly. And And some of it, I think, also has to do. So when you restrict so much, sometimes when you start adding in, your body just holds. So it was like my body was like, we're going to hold all this weight in case of another famine. It's that feast or famine response that your body has sometimes. So I gained 15 pounds before I knew I was pregnant. And which that sounds like, weren't you freaking out? But I was traveling in East Africa at the time. So I thought some of it was just like, I'm not working out as much, and maybe food, or I wasn't weighing myself. So I didn't really know. And then I came back and I was like, oh, what happened? And then I also had realized again that my period had been missing. So I took a pregnancy test, really not expecting to be pregnant. And not even understanding the pregnancy test because the explanation was all in Arabic. So I like had to, anyways, long story short, where was I going with this? Now I'm on a rant. Yeah. So, so when I was pregnant though, I gained so much weight. And so that was more hard for me because again, I was the athlete and everyone just expected that my body wouldn't change except for I'd get a belly. But I felt like I gained weight everywhere. Like I looked different. My face gained weight. Like it was, so that was hard because I had kind of expected to look like all these other cute runners who just gain a belly and you can't tell they're pregnant, but that wasn't me at all. And some of it was just my body's response after coming out of that, that eating disorder state. So yeah, that was kind of it for me. It was, the pregnancy was hard, but after I felt like it was very, very healing for my mental side of the eating disorder.
I was very conscious my entire pregnancy about my weight and only gaining a certain amount. I was very conscious of that and I ate very healthy because I was very paranoid. Just again, I was very fresh out of that phase of my life. So I was really concerned about, like, I was like terrified to get fat. That's what I thought like was going to happen. And so I gained like exactly 25 pounds, which is what they like want you to gain. And I was like the person that only had the belly, and it was because like I fought every, like, and it's like sucky now because it's like, I don't know, I like fought every craving. Like I'd be like, no, don't do it, you know? And like, it kind of like ruined the experience in a sense because I was so focused on that. I also think though that I was also just in a really bad place in my like life. It obviously the best thing that's ever happened to me, but it was unexpected. It wasn't a good relationship at like, especially close to having her. It was not going, like things were not good. So I also think that even the post losing weight and being maybe a little too thin was also a result of my mental state at the time too. So it was kind of the combination of the nursing and being like really depressed, honestly. And also again, just that having that, I wouldn't say that I had like an eating disorder per se, but I had a very restrictive diet and I was extremely conscious of, like, I weighed myself daily. There was always pressure on me to be thinner. I just like, I'm too much of a fighter to give in to actually doing what they wanted me to do. I was like, no, fuck you. But I still hyper focused on it because it was a hyper focus on me. But I just wouldn't like, and maybe I just wasn't strong enough to actually go through with it, if that makes sense, at all. But so I was, yeah, I definitely was very conscious of it, especially during my pregnancy, and then like very, very conscious of wanting to like get back to being the same afterwards. And I wish that upon no one, you know, it's a sad thing, like looking back on it. But you know, I was also a lot younger at the time and I wasn't as mentally tough and had gone through so many things in life to get me to where I am today. So it's all part of the story, but yeah, so that's my experience with it. I wish I was more like you, and like, I was so happy to be able to nurse my daughter. And I had that kind of feeling as well, but I was still like, if this is good for me too, you know, like it was kind of like that thing, like as well. So
Bridget, how was
Oh, I mean, I think I didn't really soccer players. It sounds like in the track or running world, there's a lot of pressure with body image and whatnot, and soccer isn't like that as much, or it wasn't, at least at my where I was. They were feeding us Gatorade shakes after every practice and game, and anytime they could. I feel like they were trying to put on weight for us, so that was never a pre-worry before pregnancy. So even during pregnancy, I mean, I've always just eaten well, and I kind of just kind of carried that through my pregnancy for the most part, except for the first trimester, that, you know, when you have those aversions more so. I just not being able to eat anything healthy at one point was kind of tough, but during the pregnancy, I don't think I really struggled with the weight. I gained about 25-30 pounds pretty much with all of my pregnancies, and kept it pretty neutral the whole time. I feel like my pregnancies are pretty smooth, and I'm thankful for that.
So a lot of women have got, like, you hear about going through postpartum and the depression, and I think Meg, you mentioned about the depression there and everything. Did your guys' athleticism and your workout routines and all that, did that help with a process like that, or did it just become even more difficult to do because you were depressed, and when you're depressed you don't want to do jack shit? So was it something that benefited you?
yes, I think I probably am the person that when I'm upset, I'm like more apt to work out. Like, and it can become a mild obsession because it's the only thing that makes me feel good. It was a combination probably of maybe a little bit of the postpartum, but a lot of for me was just the unhealthy relationship that I was in. Also just and then like everything's really good now, but so like I don't mean to be like throwing anyone under the bus, like my ex-husband under the bus, but like it was just a very unsupportive time. Like I had no family to help. Like I said, his job was pretty demanding, but also like a little bit of ignorance on his part, probably just not really knowing how taxing nursing is and how hard this is on a woman and the changes you go through and all of that. And we were young, so like, you know, it's all like water under the bridge at the time, you know, now, but at the time it was like, it was really hard. Like I was really in a bad place, you know what I mean? And thankfully, like like having a positive outlook on and being involved in sports, honestly, I know that sounds like crazy, but all of that stuff has always gotten me through like every hardship that I've ever been in. It's like resilience and this time shall pass and like all these things. Like it's hard now, but it's going to be fine later. You know, all those like lessons you learn just from sports, and like, I mean, just going through different hardships is like probably what kept me going. And the working out was like, that was like the best therapy I could have ever had at the time, you know? And so then it became easy for me to do, because that was like the biggest part of my day, besides just all the awesome stuff your baby's doing, that made me feel good mentally. So it was easy for me.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Bridget.
I was just gonna say, I agree. I found that working out helped me. I remember after my second, like the transition from one kid to two kids was really hard for me. And it just seemed harder than it was when I just had one. But I remember struggling afterwards, and looking back, I was like, oh, I probably had a little postpartum at that time. And in the moment, I didn't think I did, but I think going to the gym and being around those people and working hard and getting and being able to lift and run and do all that is really kind of what part of what helped get me out of that kind of funk and time period. So
it's interesting because in some ways, this aspect of myself also worked against me. So I had postpartum pretty bad after my second. Also, I found that transition hard to having two. And again, I didn't know I had postpartum. I just knew I felt really low and I was really struggling to get out of bed. But again, being the type of people that we are, I just like willpowered my way through everything. So I was like, I have to work out. And then the worse I felt, the more I would keep trying to train through it. And then I started my business when my daughter was 4 months. And I was like, I'm going to work. I was like, I was trying to work myself out of a depression. And again, I didn't know I had depression, but people around me had started to say, you're different. I think you should get help. I think you should see your doctor. Just see your doctor. Maybe you need blood work. And I just wanted to like power my way through it and like fight myself out of it. And it's like, if I work, maybe I need to work out more. Maybe I need to work harder. Maybe. And again, I actually ended up crashing pretty hard. I had ended up with a chronic fatigue. And I did hit a point where I did have to go on medication, and my daughter was over a year at that point. And it was like, I really didn't realize I was depressed until everything kind of came crashing down. And it was like, I couldn't fight through it anymore. And I wasn't on it forever, but it had to get me out of the bottom. And it was like a wake up call for me too, and this is something interesting too, that could be a whole other topic on its own. But when our coping strategy is working out and it's training, but when it becomes your only thing, it can also be a hindrance, because what I needed to do was rest, but I kept trying to outwork it, and I needed to sleep, and I needed to take a step back and just relax a little bit. And I was completely overworked. And so through all of that, I developed coping strategies. I healed from the depression and all the things that kind of caused it as well. So it was a huge learning experience for me as well, about training and then coping from mental illness. So I learned a lot through that time. But yeah, I struggled pretty severely with postpartum after my second. But yeah, that's a really good question, Dave. That's something too that, again, I think as high performers, we do like it happens to us all, and we have such high expectations. And I think, again, where that mom comparison piece comes in sometimes, you see moms who they're out there and, they're running businesses, they have, a baby strapped to their body and they're doing these things. And it's like, well, I should be able to do that. And sometimes people, and thinking about Lauren Weeks too, it's like, I should be training at that level. Like I should be back, competing at the highest level when my baby's 6 months. And it just doesn't work that way for everybody. And if I had kind of let the comparison piece go too, and just been like, it's not my year. It's not my year to sort of, I don't have to accelerate my business as quickly as possible when my baby's 4 months old. And, I don't have to be back racing right away. Like just because some other people can doesn't mean I have to do it this time. So, it's good. We have these people that inspire us and they do these awesome things, and that's fantastic, but it doesn't mean that has to be everybody's story. Yeah. So, sometimes a mom needs to be told it's okay to just rest. Like you don't have to be hitting the gym every day too.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Actually, and I think that's a good spot to end, because we're pretty much out of time anyway. And I just wanted to say something on behalf of a guy who has a daughter. You three are all amazing role models for little girls. And hopefully your daughters all can appreciate the amount of work and the lifestyles that you guys live, and show them, and hopefully they follow in your footsteps, and we get a whole nother generation of badass women that we can watch kick ass on TV.
I hope so too. Bridget's kids are already doing like DECA miles and stuff too.
Modified DECA mile.
That's all right. I've seen Bethany's kids at a few Spartan Kids race. They're dangerous.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they love it. Thanks so much, ladies, for joining us. I love that conversation. I hope people get something out of it, and yeah, keep doing amazing things in what you do.
Appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.